Okay, it's noon in my time zone, so I think it's time to start here. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for showing up for this webinar. We really appreciate you being here, and we're really looking forward to doing this. This is going to be a really interesting session here. The idea of this webinar is to continue through our series of the UNS, Unified Namespace, and this time to integrate with a great CMMS product, a maintenance product called MaintainX. So let's get on with the show. We will start with going through a couple introductions, then I'm going to review some of the sessions that we've done to date, and then from there we'll get a real brief intro from Hope around what MaintainX is. We'll then get into the meat of the whole presentation here, which is technical stuff, which is always fun, and then a bit of Q&A on the end. And also, let me stress, if you have any questions during the session, please ask them. We'll do our best to watch the questions and answer them as we go, or save some of them for the very end. So for introductions, first of all, would love to welcome Hope Kelly. She's a solutions architect at MaintainX, a great CMMS product we've become familiar with recently, and they've been a great team to work with. Frank Galuska is an IoT engineer, senior IoT engineer here at Ectobox. Dave Schultz is a solutions architect at Spruik Technologies, and I'm CEO of Ectobox. We are an Industry 4.0 integrator. Is there anything, Hope, that you wanted to add to your introduction, or kind of leave it for the whole MaintainX kind of overview?
Yeah, I think that was perfect. Thanks, Kevin.
Awesome. Dave, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was very excited about this because you know that the maintenance is part of the digital transformation, reliability of assets. So how you integrate your EAM, CMMS data within your overall transformation effort is very near and dear to me. So availability of equipment is huge. Good stuff.
Yep, near and dear to your heart, no doubt. Awesome. So what we've been doing over the series of webinars is to talk about the high-level concepts. Then we started to get into connecting to a machine, getting that data out of the machine, getting it into this concept of UNS. And if you have any questions, feel free to go back. We're going to save the time and not review all that detail here, so we can get into the meat of UNS with the CMMS, with MaintainX. But we got into a lot of those details before, then dug into actually creating a small MES and displaying downtime and OEE live from a machine, again, using the Unified Namespace. And now, of course, we're going to be connecting to the CMMS with the UNS, etc. Some of the other episodes we're considering creating, still kind of up in the air, is to work with an ERP system, connect to it via an API, and get a shop floor work order. Maybe get some master recipes, thinking about digging deep into some other technologies, maybe like HiByte, etc. All those options are on the table right now. So if you have any suggestions, please send them in. And also, one thing I'll ask too is in the comment section, please feel free to post where you're calling in. I don't know how you want to call it. Where you're calling in from, we'll just call it that. What country, what state? Would love to know where you guys are all from. With that, let's turn it over to Hope so that she can tell us a little bit about MaintainX, so that we have some concept of what MaintainX is.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Kevin. So I just wanted to take a brief moment to kind of explain, what MaintainX is and why we've partnered with Ectobox today as well. So as you can see here, MaintainX is a leading CMMS platform. Our main purpose is to create, assign, and track work orders for your specific assets. And then you can also assign specific procedures to those work orders. You can go through specific tasks and then define your preventative maintenance plan and also do your reactive work there. As you can see, we have over 5,900 global paying customers and also over 14 million work orders that have been created, which is really exciting. That number is continuing to grow. And a lot of that comes down to the usability and how easy to use MaintainX is. Awesome. We can switch to the next slide here. And I wanted to take a brief moment to kind of explain, why we've partnered with Ectobox today. And so MaintainX has a very easy to use open REST API that allows for all of its data to be sent to other platforms, whether it be Power BI, Tableau, or another ERP system. And then similar to that, MaintainX can also receive data from different platforms. And that's exactly what you'll be able to see today. So it could be from a PLC, an IoT sensor, so you can start collecting that data and have visibility in it within MaintainX. I also want to note that MaintainX is extremely event-driven. So if you take a look at our API documentation, which I hope you do afterwards, we have a section on subscriptions and webhooks. So a lot of the events that are occurring in MaintainX can then be sent to your server so that you can do additional logic or whatever needs to happen on another platform there. And we're continuing to grow to be even more event-driven so that hopefully everything that's happening in MaintainX can then be sent elsewhere, which is really in line with the UNS methodology. And I'll just mention two new features that you can look forward to in the upcoming quarters as well. The first one here is Asset Insights. So we have the ability to track if your asset is up or down, and this feature will allow you to see the history on all of your assets' downtime, some causes that could happen, and then we'll also provide some goals and recommendations as to how to fix that. So that's something you can look forward to. And then the next one is anomaly detection. That's AI powered as well, so that as you'll see today, we're actually sending in meter readings at a specific frequency. And with this feature, it'll be able to detect if there's a value that seems out of whack, that isn't a normal value, and you'll be able to create a corrective action work order so that you can fix whatever the issue may be. Awesome. Next slide here. And I just wanted to give a special shout out here to David E. He's really the magic behind all of this here today as to why we partnered with Ectobox. And so he is a leading BDR at MaintainX. And if you have any questions about MaintainX, want to learn more about it, we've included his email address there. So feel free to contact him. He's extremely passionate about this stuff, as am I. Thanks, Kevin. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's a huge thanks to David E for kind of initiating this whole process and putting it all together. It's a great guy, great member of the team at MaintainX to work with, and the whole team too has been great so far. So it's awesome.
Awesome.
Anything else, Hope?
No, I think that's perfect. Let's get to the fun
Good.
part.
Good. One of the things that I wanted to highlight too is one of the things that just kind of out of the gate impressed me. Okay, so it's a great product. It seems to work really well. It has an API. That's basic. That's like table stakes, if you will. But the fact that it is event driven, and in talking with the CTO at MaintainX, they're looking to make it even more friendly with the Unified Namespace with the UNS and even more event driven, was honestly music to my ears. Would love to see the roadmap at some point for where that's at, but you can't ask for much more than that when you're trying to take this open architecture, open technology approach with the idea, the architecture of a unified namespace, and working with products that don't lock you in, that aren't proprietary, et cetera. That was and follows the minimum technical requirements, et cetera. Just music to my ears. So that was awesome. So with that said, here's what we're doing. We are going to, this is a basic diagram that I've created to illustrate the ideas, and then Frank will be following through this whole process. But we're going to start off by pulling data from a PLC, and including, we'll pretend as though there's a problem with the PLC, and that's going to be an alarm code that drives a problem. And then that data is going to get into the MQTT data broker through Ignition into HiveMQ. And then Ignition's going to be subscribing to that data, process it a little bit, and say, hey, there's a problem. We need to create a work order. And so then some of that data is going to be pushed back to the data broker in HiveMQ. And then using HiByte here, we have as part of this UNS, if you will, HiByte is then going to take that data, push it to MaintainX to its APIs, to its REST API, and then Hope is going to be the technician. So Hope, I hope you brought your hammer to fix the machine. You have your hammer ready?
You got it.
All right, awesome, cool. So you're gonna fix the machine with the hammer, and then on her mobile phone, we'll show a couple screens in a second, but on her mobile phone, she's then going to update the maintenance work order, say I fixed it with a hammer, took a couple nails from the inventory, put a hole in it, whatever it's going to be. And then Frank's going to be showing it. We won't be able to see her screen, unfortunately, but we'll show you what the screens look like. But we'll be able to see live on Frank's screen that data being updated back into the MaintainX application, and then Frank will continue to follow the process of the data into MaintainX, back out into the UNS through HiByte, and then finally the data will arrive back to the operator at their HMI to say, hey, the machine's fixed, I can start production again, that kind of thing. And it was interesting, even a company that we were at yesterday visiting, where this kind of functionality would be really helpful. Large plant, actually multiple plants under one very large roof, and some of the lines are pretty big, and it's hard for the operators to know what's going on in this very large line. And so not only getting real live visualization about what's going on in the whole line and all the pieces of equipment in the line would be very important, but also then knowing that, oh yeah, the guy or gal in maintenance is actually working on it on the other half end of the building, and the issue is fixed, and instead of yelling over or blowing a blowhorn or something, they can get a notification on their HMI, and then they're back up and running. So this whole process makes a lot of sense. This is a quick screen capture of what the UNS with the CMMS namespace looks like that Frank is going to be working with. And this is where the data is going to be coming through. And you can actually see some of the values there. And lastly, these are the two screens for the mobile app that Hope is running, or will be running, excuse me, that she's going to be using to update the information. So Frank, before we get into it, did you want to highlight anything from this diagram that you thought would be relevant to, some context to let people know about a couple of valuable pieces of this before we dig into all the details?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the unique pieces for me here is that, the data broker itself, HiveMQ, this is actually up in the cloud. So, despite the fact that, we're running, I have a local PLC here and local virtual machine running software, we're sending data back up to the cloud, and, HiByte can subscribe and publish to the cloud and then pull that information and move it around to MaintainX and Ignition. And it really kind of, unlocks a lot of potential there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point. David, anything you want to highlight on this, or even the UNS, anything around there?
Yeah, no, I think as you walk through the use case, I think the important thing to get is that, everything that happens here within this entire ecosystem, there is a timestamp that's associated with it. So if you want to go back and do some kind of analysis on it, you now know, when did the machine go down? When did the operator make a request? Or did the data tell us, we now need to go do something here? When did the operator or technician show up at the line? And when was the line all back up and running that provided all this visualization? We can do a lot with data. We can collect a lot of data, but what we're trying to really get at is this actionable information, so a person knows what to do when these types of things occur in the most efficient way to get the process back up and running.
Makes a ton of sense. You capture the data in the events. Absolutely. Hope, what about you? A couple things. I mean, you'll be talking through it, but any comments on these screens?
Yeah, I think David highlighted it really well. I wanted to mention too the fact that it can be so timely. So because Frank is sending right to a meter reading at every 10 seconds, that value indicates the creation of a work order instantly, so that it's not taking a day for it to be notified to the maintenance techs. They'll get it right away, and then they'll be able to follow these specific steps that have been predefined, as you can see on the right-hand side here. Check all dock plates for operation, for example, and they can pass, flag, or fail, and add photos as well that can be published back.
Nice. Awesome. Good. All right. Frank, I've delayed it as long as possible. You ready? Not that you needed any more time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, let's get into demo time. I'm going to stop my share. Please share your screen.
All right.
There it is.
So starting off here, like Kevin mentioned, this is a virtual machine that I have running, and it's running both ignition and high byte. So I have a local Siemens S7 1200 PLC simulating a bottling line. So you can see some of the live data coming into ignition here. Main things to focus on are things like the heating temp here that's ramping up. We have an in-feed and out-feed for our production, just an enable bit as well. So all that's coming through, and in turn, we are publishing that to the HiveMQ data broker. Like the main thing to focus on here is the heating temp, like I said. So what we're doing is we're publishing that to the data broker, and then in not Hive, in HighByte, I have a MaintainX API connection set up where I'm reading that heating temperature and outputting it into my meter reading. So I'm bringing in the value. I'm actually generating the date in HighByte here in my model, and taking those two values and posting it to the endpoint in MaintainX for my meter. So just to see what that model looks like. So I have the connection to my value, a little bit of logic to calculate the date. And if I read that instance, I get a value of 80 and the current timestamp. So this is essentially the payload I'm sending to MaintainX. So if I switch over to MaintainX real quick, let's drag that over. You can see my heating coil meter here. I can open that up, and you can see a list of readings that updates in real time. So this is set up, as Hope said, to read every 10 seconds to get those readings. And as she also mentioned, we have a automatic work order trigger established as well. So if that reading ever gets above 305 degrees Fahrenheit, we will automatically trigger a work order, which will be assigned to Hope, and she can go through and go through the process she set up to correct that issue. So let me go ahead real quick and just toggle this, and my temperature will continue to increase and will actually go above that 305 threshold. And I can head back here, and I have a work order that is triggered. So if I go to my work orders, here is the newest one, automatically generated, assigned to Hope, and she can go on her phone and begin that procedure.
All right, get out the hammer.
Here I come. Yeah, so right away, I was notified on my phone that this work order was generated with a certain priority. And so now I'm able to go through the procedure here that was already defined, as I mentioned. So I'm going to, turn off the power. I'm inspecting it for damage. We can fill that out. Nice to know if I were to put fail here, as you can see, it's auto updating from my phone. This can automatically create a corrective action work order as well. So that way people can be notified if something did go wrong. But let's say I was able to pass it. I can even add a photo from my camera. I'm just gonna pretend this is real. And we can add that. We can also annotate here. I'm just going to upload it, and you'll see it right on Frank's screen once it's uploaded. So right away, you're able to see that image, and I'm able to go through all of the steps here, and then I'm going to mark the work order as done. And you saw the status there automatically changed to completed. If you scroll to the bottom, Frank, as well, there's an audit log on everything that happened. So you can see what time it was created. You can see when I started. I work really fast. And then I completed it at 12:19 there. And if I can always add additional time, or if I needed like a part on this work order as well, I could have added that, and the inventory would be tracked.
Awesome. Good work. Good work. You put the hammer away. And
So,
one of the things that I thought was interesting too is that we're seeing the updates that you were making in Frank's screen almost immediately. That was nice.
Very cool.
All right, Frank, let's see this data go back the other direction.
Yeah, so as Hope mentioned in her overview of MaintainX, we can also read that data back in as well. So if I go back in HiByte into my connection, I have an import here from my work orders. So I'm reading that in via the API, and I have a flow set up to then output that to my data broker. And currently I'm pulling only the changes on that every minute. So if I head back to Ignition and expand my CMMS data, you can see I have data coming in from MaintainX on that system about the work order itself. I get things like the asset ID, the priority, just the title of it, when it was last updated, all that good information that is also available in MaintainX. So I have my status of done since Hope completed that work order. So again, like Hope mentioned, anything that's really available in MaintainX is through that API. And I can access a whole host of information via that API and publish it to my data broker for other platforms like Ignition here to consume. And I could act on that data in Ignition as well.
Right. So then the next step would be for the data to be consumed by Ignition and then displayed in the operator screen using perspective, where they might have status information, downtime, quality, production, schedule, work order information for them to operate their machine and their work. Well, then machine status and maintenance work order status could be displayed for them at that point as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. We could set up, an operator screen showing the status of the machine, status of the work order, an and-on type screen showing, multiple different lines and machines at once. Since Hope worked so quickly today, we couldn't see like an in progress state there, right? But that comes through as well. So anything, just as information was updating real time on MaintainX, anything that was in there we were receiving as well in Ignition.
Right. So I want to throw out to everybody in the crowd, please feel free to throw in some questions. I have some questions that I wanted to throw out, and some others people have asked me ahead of time. But please feel free to throw in questions in the chat here, and then we'll do our best to answer them. Frank, when you were working on this, you've had a basic setup, you had a PLC, you were already connected to that PLC, obviously working from our prior demos, and the work for you to then look at MaintainX, understand how it works, understand the API, set up HiByte to integrate with the API, and then do some of the other logic. Like, how much time did that take you? Did it take days? Obviously, a leading question there. It didn't take days. But obviously, what I want to illustrate here, but what did it take you realistically?
Not much, honestly. Yeah, like you said, it wasn't days. It was hours. Couple, if that. Mainly just reading through the API documentation, figuring out what endpoints I need, what I can access, what I can post. And quite honestly, my original plan for this webinar was to generate a work order itself through the API. And then that's when Hope and the folks at MaintainX, told me about the meters and that technology, and the automatic triggers, which made things even easier.
So that those capabilities right there already started to save you time, you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of having, a bigger post and doing more data modeling in HiByte, I could just send the raw reading to MaintainX and have them trigger the work order.
Nice. I hope you were going to say something.
Yeah, I appreciate you noticing that. I was going to mention as well that what's nice about using the meter readings is now the administrators that are in MaintainX can define what should be in that work order. So if it's the priority, the team, the procedures, the specific steps, that isn't up to the person who's doing the connections. They'll just need to take care of connecting the data into MaintainX, the reading values themselves, and then those work orders can always be modified because now we're not hard coding it in any way. It's always dynamic within the MaintainX platform.
Nice, good. We've got a couple questions coming in. I have some more to ask, but before doing that, wanted to give Dave a chance to make any comments on what he's seen so far. Any thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, no, I mean, so this is a particular application and I'm sorry if you meant David E, or if me,
No, sorry,
so apologize if I jumped out.
Mr. Schultz, Dr. Schultz.
All right, cool. Apologies. This is the challenge when you have many Daves out
Yes.
there. I believe David Lee is the formal name. So yeah, this is just one of many of the applications. So another one that Frank talked a little bit about, the use case where maybe it's not off of a particular meter and the operator does need to make a maintenance request. The exact same type of workflow could be used for configuring something like that. So there's many different workflows and business cases that something like this can be utilized, and tools like MaintainX are very much they're an integral part of what we're doing. But as I mentioned earlier, it's all hey, there's a downtime event. Is what's the status? Is a work order been created? What's the status of that particular work order? All of that information is available in real time, utilizing strategies like a UNS, where we're connecting all of our intelligence through a common technology, rather than just doing these point-to-point integrations. So, very powerful on what can be done with this type of approach.
Yeah, completely fair. Makes sense. David Schultz or Frank, do you want to tackle the first question that came through? What brand of PLC can work with this integration? A lot. We'll start with that. How else would you describe that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, like I mentioned, we're using a Siemens S7-1200 for this particular example. But really anything that has that you can connect to Ignition can then be published to the data broker using their MQTT modules. So that include, Modbus devices, BACnet devices, Allen Bradley, Siemens, even just general, OPC, UADA devices. So those are all, native to Ignition that would work with this exact setup. Getting off to kind of offshoot, you could also use like gateway devices if you have a more specific, like a Mitsubishi PLC that doesn't support any of those protocols. You could use a gateway device to convert that into something like OPC UA, or right into MQTT and publish to the data broker that way.
Like a Maple Systems gateway?
Yeah, Maple Systems gateway for a hardware device, or KEP server as like a software service.
Software Toolbox, I think, has some stuff as well. There are a few others too. Dave, anything you want to? David Schultz, you want to add anything to that?
No, Frank covered it. I think it's more like what brand of PLC can't we connect to, and I think that would be a shorter list. Really, it's the point here is that we're connecting into technology. It's all good stuff. Great question though.
Yeah, it is. Even to the point of some of the companies we talk with, especially in metals and large metals companies with large equipment, very large equipment. We have a machine here from the 1960s. Oh, we have a machine from the 1940s. Okay. We can connect to it. Maybe not digitally, but then.
Well, as I say, we have our ways.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we have our ways. There are ways to do it. Absolutely. One of the other question was, how long does it take to integrate this stack of tools? What's a reasonable expectation for a mid or large size organization to get up and running? That's a big question. Let's take it from a simple perspective. Of course, it depends. Every answer to the question like that's going to be it depends. Having said that, let's think in terms of a pilot project, one or two machines, and to get up and running in, I think in terms of developer weeks or developer months, depending on what you have set up. Do you have a network? Well, that's a whole ball of wax in and of itself. Do you have PLCs, or do you have to, as David said, we have our ways, work some other kinds of magic? And then do you have an OT network? And let's assume all of that stuff exists. Network is there, OT, IT, secured, PLCs, all that kind of stuff works, is set up, and then you need to install a Maple Systems gateway, a hardware gateway device or a software gateway device, Kepware, etc. Then install HiveByte and get a broker in place like HiveMQ and Ignition, and then let's assume you already have CMMS like MaintainX that's easy to work with. Let's work with some well-defined parameters to set that up for a pilot. A week, 2 weeks time from scratch, maybe far less. But there's a whole lot of work in getting all that kind of stuff set up. Calendar time, it can take longer because teams are involved. It becomes complex. Then to scale out from there can be a complete different ball of wax. It really depends on what you have. So the idea is that it's not an enormous, massive amount of time. And one of the reasons is because we are using technologies that get us away from some of the prior ways of thinking, if you will. We are using minimum technical requirements. We are using technologies that are edge driven, that report by exception, that are lightweight, and we're using open technologies. And we don't have a lot of behemoth technical debt that we have to work with a whole bunch of really big, expensive tools to install, et cetera. And that allows us to set up architectures that are much simpler. We don't have the idea of a Purdue model with this massive DMZ layer for security with multiple services to try to manage security on a pull response kind of setup. It becomes much more direct, so that once you add a new device, that device and its data is available throughout the rest of the UNS. Dave, do you want to explain that maybe a little bit better than I did? Or
No,
add
I
on
think, yeah, you did a fantastic job. As you know, the answer to many great questions are it depends. So you nailed that right out of the park. And I think really another answer is a lot less time using this approach than it would be to some of the tools that we're
That's a
using.
good way to do it.
You know, as I always say, when we start picking technology, you mentioned the minimum technical requirements. It has to be things that, you know, I can solve a problem. But where it really gets to be challenging is, can I extend that solution and can I scale that solution? And the way we take this approach of once we have, you mentioned that pilot project, once we've done that first one, and we start adding on some features, so we extend it, now the ability to scale across the plant because we've parameterized or we've built in some tools that allow us to scale it. It makes it a lot faster to go. So we're getting away from all these point to points, and we're connecting all of our technologies into, or all of our intelligence to technologies. Makes it a lot easier to do. So I would say a lot faster than what you might think.
Yeah, fair. So Nick asks a really good question. What are the best ways to convince old school leadership to invest and adopt systems like this? What approaches have you seen successful? First of all, explaining just what we talked about, that point-to-point integration isn't necessary anymore. You don't have to set up the PLC, then set up the PLC in Kepware, then set up the PLC in some, in the, excuse me, in the broker, or excuse me, the historian, and then set up the PLC at this level in the DMZ, and then set up the, et cetera, or set up the tags, I should say. It's far more straightforward, far simpler at that point. Dave, what other kinds of thoughts do you have around that question?
So a lot of it is, one of the adages that we adhere to is that, we don't try to win the theoretical arguments, we win the results war. And the reason why we demonstrate and do these videos where we're actually using real PLCs, we're using real software, we're using these real types of environments, we can demonstrate to a client their solution utilizing what it is that we, or they can see their solution using their hardware, their technology. And it's hard to combat and argue with, here's how I did it and here's how quickly something like that scaled out. So that's one of them. The other thing you can use is the fear, uncertainty, doubt, or what we like to call the FUD. And we oftentimes will open up a lot of these conversations of why are we here? And the reality is that we better get good at doing this type of approach, or we're going to be in trouble from a manufacturing standpoint. Because the whole purpose of a UNS is that we're creating a lot more data. We can become a data-driven organization, and the more data you can produce, contextual, the right information, the right time, and the right format to the right people, it's a competitive advantage. Along with, here I'll go down this path again, my availability and reliability of my equipment. If I can get more production out of my assets because I'm maintaining them properly with tools like MaintainX, I become very dangerous to my competitors.
Yeah, you had made that point when we were doing some of the prep work for this webinar, and I'm really glad you remember that. That was a really key one. Another one, maybe not an approach, but just one well, small, but I think extremely important aspect of some of the pushback that people might get in some of the companies is IT. IT very often isn't really aware of or understands manufacturing very deeply. They don't understand OT. Very often it's hands off. You manage that stuff. We're just going to put a security wrapper around it and make sure data, the wrong data doesn't get out. Uh, uh, One of the things that we have worked a lot on is having a lot of conversations with IT departments and their cybersecurity experts, with some of our people who are cybersecurity experts, to help them understand how this really works, in that it really can be secure. And now that I think about it, Frank, Dave, that might be a good topic too. Or I don't know how. Yeah, I guess even with the UNS, that could apply too. That might be a good topic for us to tackle as well. Um, but that would be knowing that IT can be convinced that these kinds of approaches, this kind of an architecture can work and it can be to their advantage, might help a lot in greasing the path forward for convincing people this can work. Hopefully that helped. Let's keep on with some of the questions. Anders asks, how is it important, or how do we import or transfer data from another CMMS into MaintainX? Actually, that was one of the questions that I had prepared ahead of time because I was thinking about that. Yeah, is it possible, and how do you migrate data from a prior CMMS into MaintainX, and then can I utilize any of the history and machine structure collected in another system? Hope, you want to take that one?
Yeah, 100%. That's a great question. So we have a very impressive implementation team and import tools specifically designed for this use case. So we're able to take your data that you already have, whether it be from another software. It's easy if it's from another software because then you can export it, and then we can help you reformat it into our structure, which is very basic. It's almost very similar to the structure you had seen that Frank showed before. And we can import all of that data as well. We also work with PDFs. Let's say if you have that already or you're starting with a little bit amount of data, it can grow organically. And I worked actually specifically with a client who had a lot of meter readings on all of their vehicles that they wanted to import the mileage readings that they had so that they could start at the proper value and still have the history there. And so it's possible to do that as well. We have meter reading history import capabilities that we would help structure with you during your implementation phase within MaintainX.
Awesome. Good question. Thank you. Another one, Jerry, you're asking another question. Is like, can you have one more? Of course, you can have another question answered. uh, can it work with a local network only where there's no network? You're saying that your factory doesn't have the production machines connect internally, but it seems like they don't have any access to the network. So with that in mind, can you still send and receive data through an API to MaintainX? Am I reading that question right? That effectively your plant doesn't have access to the internet?
To me, I saw two questions in there. One is there an on-prem solution with MaintainX? And then the other, I would just as a comment of, I think many of the reasons why you can't get your production and maintenance data off the plant floor is due to how technology used to be done. Kevin was talking earlier about some of the cybersecurity considerations of our architecture. It almost would be best to have an offline conversation to talk about how we actually can get that manufacturing data off your plant floor and do it securely in a way that bad actors can't access your network, and that data is securely sent to a tool like, say, MaintainX, so it can be fully leveraged and utilized.
Yeah, it gets into conversations around the data being edge driven, going one direction. So don't have to open firewall ports going the other direction. The connections are initiated at the edge itself and can be encased within, if you will. It's already encrypted and then encased within VPN connections as well. So a lot of opportunities. But again, more details, better to have an offline conversation like Dave recommended. Absolutely. Hope the on-prem option, does that exist?
No, we are a fully cloud-based solution, but I do like David's suggestion of, speaking offline to understand what requirements there are at hand right now to see if there's any valid workarounds that we can do. But for the most part, we are cloud-based.
Yep, yep. There are a lot of tools out there like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about gateways, and that's fundamentally what a gateway does is it segments off your operations network to other networks. And we certainly can continue to utilize a DMZ architecture if that's really going to be important. It adds a little complexity, but we can certainly work around just about any edge use case. But to me, I would implore the value of what it is we're doing, and I think we'll start to realize it's almost we don't have a choice to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a case in point where we were having conversations with a particular engineering firm that was really embedded within the, let's call it the Industry 3.0 Purdue model, and a manufacturer that wanted to push the limits and let's get into this Industry 4.0 idea. And the engineering teams were really accepting and adopting, ready to adopt the UNS architecture and related ideas. And we were able to help the engineering firm understand that this can work, that these architectures can work, and it can be secure. And then it was also the conversation with the IT group and the cybersecurity guy, company with many plants, and so they've got a really smart guy at the head of cybersecurity, and we passed muster. This idea, let's say, not even just us, but just the whole idea and architecture passed muster. And so, to me, that's saying something pretty good. What about HiByte in the mix here? Where does the value of HiByte come into play here, Frank, for you when creating solutions like this or some of the others that you've been working on? One of the first implementations we did of HiByte a few years ago or more. Where does the value of that tool come into play here?
Yeah, I mean the value of HiByte in my mind is around the data modeling, right? So it can connect to multiple different data sources. And like you saw, even with what I was sending to MaintainX to the meter, it's Java based, so I can do some Java functions in there as well that generate to get like the date, for example, or some basic logic as well. So that's really what I see is the value is connecting these platforms and getting data to and from the data broker with ease, no matter what the type of connection is, whether it's API, database, OPC server, whatever it may be. HiByte can help connect to it, model it, and get it to a data broker or another platform.
Yeah, you caught it at the end. I was just going to say that too. Connect, model, flow is the basic, I don't want to say mantra that they have, but that's how the tool works. That's what a lot of what the tool does. Multiple drivers, databases, APIs, OPC, and some of the cloud infrastructures as well. They have some really good integrations, and the product continues to grow. David, what about you? What are your thoughts around value of a tool like HiByte in situations like this?
Yeah, so HiByte it has a tremendous amount of connectivity. So it's, in my, where I am, there's a lot of plant floor connectivity that we have through many of the tools that are out there. What HiByte does is that it extends that ability to connect into all types of data. So if you just look at the sheer number of, can it connect to that OT data? Yep, it has some connectivity there as well. But its power is in doing more of these, endpoints that are going to exist in cloud, whether it's an API or I'm trying to think of all the various Azure and AWS endpoints they can reach into, and those types of things. But as Frank was mentioning, it's the ability to, we're trying to take this time series data and we're translating that into an event. Something occurred, and the ability for HiByte to be able to process a lot of that business logic to trigger these workflows or trigger these events is one of the powers that's there. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, it's about scaling and extending. Well, because I'm doing a lot of this programmatically, I can scale the solution throughout the plant from one line to the next, one site to the next. But as I want to extend and get into different use cases, I can now take that same data model and I can present that to other endpoints that are are going to consume that same type of data and do different things with it. So that integration of I can add additional intelligence very easy, and that's where you start realizing the power of HiByte and the many things that it can do.
Yeah, absolutely good. Thank you. Hope, if you don't mind, can you or David E, can you grab the link for your API documentation too? I didn't think that we could throw that into the comments. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
One last thought around some of the questions that have come in for me prior to this conversation too was, so can you, this kind of integration we have with MaintainX, can you do that with other kinds of tools, functional tools that are within the plant, like an LMS, lab management system, quality management system, or ERP, etc.? And the answer is obviously yes. And it's tools like HiByte that can do that. And the fact that those transactional systems work with a lot of the technologies that a DevOps tool like HiByte can work really well. And the fact that companies like MaintainX have their API so well documented, it was pretty straightforward for Frank to just kind of pick up the ball and run with it. And I don't think he had many, if any, questions for Hope at the beginning when we were starting to look at the product. So it worked really well. Are there any other questions from anybody in the audience would like to ask anything? We'd love to hear more questions if you have any.
Kevin, if I can jump in, Kevin here.
Yep.
So a lot of the questions I'm hearing, it's a lot about change management. So data migration from one CMMS to another and what that looks like. So as we learned for digital transformation, the first step is education. And in that component of education is talking about change management. If you don't talk about change management, then the project won't move forward. And knowing what you're getting yourself into, understanding what that data migration looks like from one software to another, understanding, well, how long does it take to get up and running with MaintainX? Well, at one site, 80% of our implementations are finished at 3 weeks. So we're able to go live where all the maintenance team can start using MaintainX. And a big component of that is how easy the system is to use. Now, from there, well, how long does it take for me to train a maintenance technician on MaintainX? Well, for us, really, you can do it in around 10 minutes. And it's so intuitive that either they can, and I encourage everyone who's watching this right now, you can go to the App Store, whether it's on Google Play, Android, or the Apple Store, and download MaintainX for free and try it out. And you can create a work order within 2 minutes of downloading MaintainX, you're up and running. And we work very closely with our implementation team to make sure you guys are set up correctly. And if you do have any questions, say somebody wasn't as good as Frank, hey, I got some questions. Well, you're going to reach out to MaintainX, and it's going to be Hope on the solutions architect team who's actually going to help guide you and get you there. We're hearing a lot of more people coming to us. Hey, are you guys familiar with the UNS? And we're like, yeah, we are. And so we're able to have that conversation, meet the minimum technical requirements, and we want to be that node in the network where we're publishing and subscribing into the UNS, whatever flavor broker that you want to use. And from there, okay, so change management, we can go live in 3 weeks at one site. Well, I work at a company where there's 300. So leadership is never going to want to go for something like this. Well, we're able to go live with over 200 facilities in 120 days. That's 3 months. And obviously there's a lot of work going into that, a lot of planning. But we're able to successfully set up a huge enterprise manufacturing company in around 3 months, where we have really high levels of adoption of the system. And one question probably people are going to have, internet connectivity. So with MaintainX, yes, there is an offline mode. So as long as you're able to receive that work order, download it, and then you go into an area where there's no internet, you can go into offline mode, continue to work on MaintainX, whether you're filling it out with your fingers or talking into the phone, talk to text, and then you complete the work, you get out of the Wi-Fi dead zone, and then you're reconnected, and then all the information syncs back to MaintainX and then would publish into the UNS whenever you have that connectivity. So change management, data migration, connections, sensors, we love to talk about it. If you want to check MaintainX out, encourage you to download the app for free. And you're probably going to end up talking to me or Hope at some point. and we'll love to have that conversation.
Awesome. Good. Thank you, David. Really appreciate it. So there are no more questions. We are at 49 minutes for this webinar. So we are well ahead of time of the planned hour. So we'll give you, I'll take 1 minute and we'll just to say thanks to everybody, and we'll give you 10 minutes back to your day. I'm sure everybody will enjoy that. And then at least here on the eastern part of the US, it's lunchtime. All right. Thank you so much, David E., for putting this whole thing together. Huge thank you. And to Hope as well for all the work, all the hard work with the hammer on the machine, fixing it, and also helping us prepare for this session as well. David Schultz, Dr. Schultz, many thanks, as always. Look forward to the next one with
Thank you for the invitation.
and Frank doing all the heavy lifting here. Huge thank you to you as well. And also, I know from HiByte we have Tori and John on the line, and I saw from HiveMQ, Kudzai was here as well. So pleasure to have you guys here. Thank you so much for joining. All right, everybody. Thank you. We will make this video available on YouTube, and then we'll be sending out some information on the next UNS series. Take care and enjoy your weekend to come.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye.